Cops like me because they can talk to me.
Hi everyone, it's Kirsty and you know me, I'm the criminal astrologer. As promised, today we're going to look at the natal chart plus some transits and progressions for Ed Kemper, the serial killer, otherwise known as the co-ed killer. As you'll see here on Astro Databank, which is just absolutely the best astrology site, he's got a AA rating, so it's a verified time. He was born on the 18th of December 1948 at 11:04 p.m. as Edmund Emil Kemper III. His father's name's Edmund Emil Kemper as well. Born in Burbank, LA, California, PDH, blah, blah. So we have an absolutely verified chart here, which we'll go into in a minute. First, I'll give you a little rundown. Now, I won't read all of this, but this gives you the dates of his murders that he committed. But between the years of 1964 and 1973, Ed Kemper, who is a behemoth of a man who stands at 6'9" and 250 pounds, killed and dismembered 6 young women, his grandparents, his mother, and her best friend. Now, Ed Kemper was one of the main characters on the latest Netflix MINDHUNTer serial killer show that I just thought was fantastic. The guy that played Ed Kemper did a fantastic job, as you'll see throughout this. So yeah, he was born and he was raised by his mother, basically. He was a middle child, had 2 sisters. His dad was absent. He left the family when Ed was 7, and then he never got to see his dad. But Ed Kemper blamed his mother. So at the age of 8, as it often happens, his world sort of split into 2 with the divorce and separation of his parents, and his mother looked after him. His mother was an abusive lady by all accounts, and obviously he thought so because he murdered her. So yeah, he basically, when he was 15, he shot and stabbed both of his grandparents. Then he phoned his mum to say that he'd done that. He was institutionalised as a juvie in a mental hospital for 5 years, was released to his mum's custody as being cured. They resumed their relationship, continued to argue, etc. And then in 72, he murdered his mother, but all the meanwhile he killed a bunch of other people as well. All right, so we're going to have a look at his natal chart. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to everybody, so please don't go, oh, I've got a Sagittarius sun, so does that mean I'm a serial killer? Like, you know if you're a serial killer or not, so if you are, just go and hand yourself in. Don't worry about the astrology of it. It's easy to see in hindsight when somebody's a killer like this, but there's something special, not good special, but there's something different about a person like this. And we have the ability to look at transits and progressions for dates that they did certain things, so we can pinpoint it. If we could pinpoint everything in our life in hindsight beforehand, it would solve a lot of problems, but it would take a long time. So in hindsight, it's easy to see how he reacted and why he reacted through his natal chart. It can be taken over to your own natal chart if you understand parts of it. And, you know, maybe if a person is not quite there, but understood why they were like that, like Ed Kemper actually wanted to understand why he was like that, then perhaps he could have been stopped. He could have stopped himself. So it's a hard one. Swings and roundabouts.
But I look back on that and wish I had earlier, when I was saying those things to myself. The people who were later dead wouldn't be. The regret that came later would have not had to be.
This is Ed Kemper's natal chart. He is a Virgo rising with Saturn on the ascendant, which shows his huge size. If we see Jupiter or Saturn on the ascendant, it can show weight or height. So this Saturn gives him that air of authority, the size. The Virgo is very representative of how he talks.
Because I knew exactly how their minds worked from watching Wombat.
What kind of trap are you talking about?
And one of those was talking about those crimes too much.
Because talking too much about the crimes, over interest. You have to remain casual.
As you'll see. Yeah, he's very Virgo, and I would imagine that he is extremely organised. I know he has an office in his cell. He does audio books, like there's all crazy things that he does, but he's an organised person. And he can explain what he did and why he did it to the best of his knowledge very well, like a Virgoan.
I'm not an expert.
Well, hold on, I'm not an expert. I'm not an
An
authority.
I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
I'm just an extremely accomplished murderer.
I was also
So that's his ascendant. His sun is at 27 degrees Sagittarius in the 4th house. It's opposing Uranus in the 10th house. The 4th and the 10th house is mum and dad. So obviously we're going to be looking there because there's a big opposition, the red line, between some major planets. The sun is our soul, it's our true self. Uranus is unusual things that happen to us at different times and represents a few different things. He also has his moon in Leo. That is definitely to his detriment. If he had a softer moon, he may have not felt so emotionally wrecked by his mother.
She had a very violently outspoken position on men.
and had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men.
He truly believes that he knows everything that his mother did, why she did it. He's very bossy in that sense.
So involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds.
And as you'll see now, he knows what he wants to say about his mother.
And I knew I was going to kill her. You know, I was honest with myself for the first time.
And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly. It hurts. A 6 young woman dead because of the way she raises her son and the way her son is raised, the way he grows up.
And now everyone knows it was because of what she did to me, because of the way she treated her son.
I rationalized that to give up would be insane. To give up would be crazy. I'd be giving away my freedom, and I don't need to.
So that's that moon in Leo, and it's in the 11th house. He has a Scorpio Venus in the 3rd house, which makes a whole lot of sense. I'm going to tell you why. Mercury in the 4th house, Jupiter in the 5th, Mars in the 5th, a very empty area here where that's related to other people. So it's all about him. This is him over here. This is others over here. So he doesn't care about others, he cares about himself. He has Pluto in the 12th house, Saturn in the 1st, Neptune in the 2nd, and I'm going to go through a couple of interpretations of what these mean. People with the sun in the 4th house need to delve deep inside to find who they are. The 4th house represents our genealogy, so, you know, he's killed his mother, his grandmother, his grandparents. The 4th house is very indicative of our ancestry. Okay, so with the sun in the 4th house, there's a struggle to define the self, and then there becomes rage on the home front. So it's very, very typical of what we know of Ed Kemper. With the sun in the 4th, people that have that need to distinguish their own identity, their own individual identity, as a distinct identity away from the family, without denying that they're also a part of the family. So, as you can hear already, there's some pretty harsh family dynamics when the sun is in the 4th house like that at times. So on one side, there's a danger of deriving the identity too much from the whole ancestry and then becoming a replica of what it represents or how it has shaped him. Or on the other side, there's a danger of totally rejecting the background and his background altogether as a means of freeing himself. So he didn't do that. He chose to derive his identity from his ancestry, as you'll see. Now, the sun being the father in the 4th house, we take the 4th house to represent his father. So energies from this 4th house, Sun and Mercury, experienced through his father are projected onto him. So people with the sun in the 4th house might experience their dad as being so powerful and authoritative that they can't even surmount a crippling sense of their own inferiority. So they may have to do battle with the father to sever the hold that he has on them. In other cases, the father may have been physically or psychologically absent. For a boy or a child, this means that there wasn't a clear sense of a father upon which to model his own masculine qualities. These would have had to have been found from himself. So, excuse me, there's a strong need to own his own space where he can exercise authority and influence, and living with his mother didn't help, and for some reason he held his father in such high esteem. His father was absent, which we often see with this opposition here, and quite often with the sun in the 4th house. His father was actually absent the majority of the time, but he viewed him as this strong John Wayne type of person and blamed his mother completely for everything that she did. Now I'm going to move on to the mother. Well, actually, no, we'll go with the sun opposing Uranus to see more about Dad. Okay, so the sun opposite Uranus like that in the 4th and the 10th house, it shows behavioural patterns of a father that is not productive at the time that the baby's born. The child is then caught up in this unproductive pattern. His father, Ed Kemper's father, could present himself in such an unorthodox way that the subconscious mind of Ed Kemper develops a pattern that includes this unorthodox view. So this father was such a strong person to him, although he was absent, it embedded into him this view of this pattern. It makes a whole lot of sense. It says that the father causes the child to undergo hardship and life's just not easy with Dad. that's what that represents there. So relationships then are often really difficult with this aspect as well, as they were with him, because they present themselves to others in a manner that's difficult for other people to understand.
First date was an absolute disaster. Wasn't her fault. You know? And I didn't blame her even then. I'm saying it was a terrible tragedy, but boy, she didn't ever talk to me again. It was awful. It wasn't sexual or grabbing at her. That was just such a dork, taking her.
So the idea of him being different like his dad then developed onto how he spoke, there's Mercury, but also then how he presented himself to women, etc. So carrying on with the relationship theme, looking at Venus in the 3rd house in Scorpio, this actually shows his ability to communicate in an easy and fluent and very non-threatening manner, as you'll see right now.
It would be a guess, but I'd say right now, far more than 35. In North America, more than 35.
35?
Now, he doesn't have really too many hard aspects to Venus. There is a square from Saturn, but I actually feel that that's to his... It's not detrimental to him. He utilises that in whichever way he does. Yeah, I'm not saying that this person's good or bad or anything. He is. He's terrible. But sometimes I may say something and it sounds like I'm sort of defending. So anyway, when Venus here is in the 3rd house, it gives that non-threatening manner that he has, this way of communicating and opening up to people. He shows like a receptivity, welcomes the FBI in, wants to share. It's not truthful, but he still wants to share, and he's still pleasant. And that's that Venus in the 3rd house. It's Mr. Smooth Talker. Another thing that Venus in Scorpio does, though, is occasionally, and especially it's in conjunct Uranus, this unusual, unorthodox thing. I think it's possible that he maybe had been molested by his dad or something. There's something going on with his dad and his mum, but see the mum is the blue line going to Venus here. But this green line to Uranus and then back to the Sun and then joining Venus again in Scorpio in the 3rd house, to me sort of shows that there was an unorthodox view of sexuality, and perhaps he was shown things that he shouldn't have been, or subjected to something that he shouldn't have been, and had a completely skewed sense of sexual self.
Hog wild and totally limp. What I'm saying is, I found myself doing things in an attempt to make things fit together inside. I was doing sexual probings and things. I mean, in the sense of striking out and reaching out and grabbing and pulling to me, but appalled at the sense that it wasn't working. That isn't the way it's supposed to be. That isn't the way I want it.
Yeah, his sexuality was, well, it was grotesque. He had sex with corpses, ultimately. So, I mean, it's disgraceful. It went to such a level. But yeah, there is a pattern here with this unorthodox type of high valuing of this absent father. Okay, let's look at mum now in the 11th house there, because I've got plenty more and this is going to go for ages. Okay, so we'll just go over this one reasonably quickly. The moon in the 11th house seeks security and comfort and a sense of belonging through friends and groups of people more than mum. So what it can show is that mum is deemed more like a friend. So when his mother did things to him, it was like, how can my friend do this to me? The moon in the 11th can make a person impressionable, and they should exercise some discrimination in the choice of people that they associate with. Now, I don't think that was an issue for him. I'm not sure if he had many friends, but anyway. It can show sort of, it shows us that he felt as though his mother put her friends before him.
So involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds.
As you'll see. So it's possible with this placement that unfinished business with his mother was then projected onto females, and you would think female friends, but it was actually strangers until it was his family. So the unfinished business that he felt, this rage and anger that he felt towards his mother, even though she was there, but I have read that she locked him in the basement and did all sorts of things, and so he didn't have a good upbringing. But also the fact that he killed her friend is interesting. That's the 11th house.
Of killing dozens more people, of leaving a trail of bodies across the country, and at one point he just got on the telephone and turned himself in. He said it was time for the killing to stop. In his case, he said publicly that it was his mother that he was killing all along, and when he killed his mother, that was the end. It's a very deep psychological observation from himself. It may be very accurate.
It was spring.
So the mother in the 11th house may be experienced more as a friend than an actual mother. So if it's used correctly, a placement like this can accumulate so many friends, a family of friends. So natally in other charts, it can be utilised so well. This man didn't utilise his moon well. He had a very harsh and rageful anger against his mother, an unknown...
She had a very violently outspoken position on men.
And had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men.
Unorthodox relationship with his absent father. So yeah, all right, that's just a quick one. Now, interesting, let's just... Oh, okay. So apparently Ed Kemper's father forgave him at some point. And I believe that was on his deathbed. So there's Ed Kemper's father. Yeah, he raised by a terrible mother who didn't hesitate to lock him in the cellar when he was a child. He became shy and isolated. He dreamed of revenge, morbid games in which death and mutilation played an essential part. That's that Venus, Uranus, Sun thing going on. Aware of his inadequacy, he admired his absent father and actor John Wayne. So, yeah, there's that strange admiration of his absent father. Okay, so if we go to the Astro Data Bank and go back here, it's great because we can actually go... So I'm going to go to his first homicide, 7th of May 1972. So this shows his natal chart as it was, and then the planets on the outside are transits and progressions, so what was going on at the time that he decided to kill someone. So the things that I do see are the progressed Saturn very close to, the progressed moon, very close to transiting Saturn. The moon and Saturn colliding is not pleasant. Saturn represents authority and father figure types and how he views authority. the moon is the mother and how he views women, and the two are clashing and not well. Another thing I see is progressed Venus is actually near 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So his progressed Venus, so from here it had moved right on top of his sun when he killed the first girl that day. So Venus was really the precursor of that.
I altered, well, they weren't really spontaneous. I altered how I approached these young ladies from the point of capture, from the first time. What I had wanted to do was to secure them and to suffocate them with plastic bags over their heads. I had some completely unrealistic perspective that was quick, that they would lose consciousness rapidly.
Now, it's heading towards 29 degrees, so one can only assume as the years go by, he probably picks up the pace around about when Venus moves to 29 degrees of Sagittarius. What else do we have here? A Jupiter return. Okay, so he was only really young. He was very young. So Jupiter was back at its natal position. It had gone round the chart once and returned. But I feel that the most interesting and important one here is progressed Venus exactly conjunct his natal sun. The absent father, anger towards mother, and resentment then towards females all shows up in this area here. Okay, let's go back. Now we're going to go a bit further because the planets aren't going to move much. He did a few killings in 1972. Okay, 21st of April. That day is never good in history. 1973, he killed his mother, beheaded her. Oh dear. Okay, let's have a look at the day that he killed his own mum. Okay, again, his natal chart is in the middle here. Oh, look, we have Venus there. Now, where's Venus on this here? 29 degrees Sagittarius. Bingo. Okay, Venus has moved a couple of degrees past the Sun. But it's coming very close to Mercury there, but it's at 29 degrees. He was at the end of his rope with however he was feeling on that day, and women weren't enough. Girls weren't enough. It was time for him to do something to his mum. And as you'll see here, that was extremely premeditated.
At one point, he just got on the telephone and turned himself in. He said it was time for the killing to stop. In his case, he said publicly that it was his mother that he was killing all along. And when he killed his mother, that was the end. It's a very deep psychological observation from himself. It may be very accurate.
It was spring.
Okay, so we can see his progressed MC and the moon, which is his mother, has come together. So the MC is this highest point of the chart. It's like the top of the Eiffel Tower. It's like the pinnacle of I can't do this anymore. And it's also like the public's going to find out. When the moon is in the 10th house like this or near the MC, the public always finds out about it and it becomes quite big. So there's a couple of representations of this moon, but the moon conjunct the MC seems to be the problem here. Venus at 29 degrees. We've got transiting Neptune, which is delusions and sexual fantasies and any fantasies and all types of things.
Keep inside forever. As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, or looking at it, and I'm about to go crazy, literally. I'm about to go completely flywheel loose and just fall apart. I say, wow, this is insane. And then I told myself, no, it isn't. You're saying that. And that makes it not insane. I said, I'm sane, and I'm looking at a seven. I said, well, wait a minute. I see old paintings and drawings of
transiting through the 4th house of family and mother and home and father. So there's delusions. But he knew what he was doing, though. He wasn't insane. I believe that he knew exactly what he was doing. This Neptune squaring Mars here gives me a bit of an indication that his killing was more of a job to him, as you'll see here.
I'm not an expert.
Well, Holden, I'm not an expert. I'm not an
I'm
authority.
I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
I'm just an extremely accomplished murderer.
I was also
Now, go suicide attempt way later. Let's see what happened there. Okay, now his natal sun's opposing Saturn. Saturn is death itself. Wow, everything really stays around this whole area throughout all these years. It's quite a slow movement, but I really feel as though this Moon, Saturn, Cancer, around the MC, this 4th house energy here. Where's Venus? Venus is still at 29 degrees. Yeah, his entire life, basically, Venus stayed and stopped at 29 degrees. So the anger he had for women and the contempt he had for them was extreme, to say the least. So again, just a quick rundown. The Virgo rising makes him extremely articulate, as you can see. He's a talker, as you can see. Venus in the 3rd house makes him a smooth talker. The Moon in the 11th house makes him feel as though his mother cares more about her friends and everybody else than him. The Sun in the 4th house shows that his father was absent. The Sun opposing Uranus shows that he had an unorthodox worshipping of this absent father and hatred of his mother. Okay, I hope that helps a little bit to understand the mind of a serial killer. Now, obviously, other things are in play here. It's nature, nurture, and also often head injuries. Now, I'm not 100% sure about Ed Kemper. He may have had a head injury, but it's a combination of nature, being born, the way that you're born and who you're born to, and nurture. I don't believe it's one or the other. I think it's important to remember that. And free will is absolutely imperative. Understanding this 4th house, if everybody could understand their 4th house, which is their deep ancestry, their roots, the problems that they may have that may stem from parents, etc. If everyone could understand this 4th house, the world would be a whole lot different. Unfortunately, this person's blamed absolutely everything on his mum and dad because his whole self was consumed with that internalization instead of having friends and this area here where there's other people. Like I said, it was just all about him and his family. And when his family broke up, that probably flicked a switch in his head as well. But yeah, the family dynamics gave him the excuse for the hatred of women. Now, obviously, we have to remember he's a pathological liar and a serial killer. But I will say I believe that the Virgo, the Mercury conjunct the Sun in Sagittarius, is his smarts. I think that's him explaining what serial killers are and helping, as you'll see.
It would be a guess.
But I'd say right now,
Far more than 35.
in North America, more than 35.
35?
And I believe that he reads those audiobooks because his voice is pleasant and people know it, although he isn't pleasant. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.